So let's now break into your questions and the things that people have sent me. So some of these are things I get asked online. Some of these are things I get asked in clinic. But they're the ones that I probably get asked the most about. I've not ranked any of these in priority order or significance. I've not ranked them in the ones that are asked. The first one's not asked more than the last one. It's just the most common ones. So this is the classic one. Someone's starting training for an ultra, their first time. It's breaching into the unknown for many people. And the question normally is, Mike, how much should I run? What sort of mileage should I be doing each week? What is the number I'm aiming for? Now, I think a lot of the time my answer is frustrating. I'm reticent to give them a number because it depends on too many factors. It depends answer really applies here. What I really want to be knowing to be, because you can give them that answer, but it's an answer relevant to them, not a blanket answer. What's your previous running experience? What's your previous injury experience? What races have you done recently? How long is the race you're training for? How long have you got to get there? How many times a week can you run? So when you're looking at getting this answer and you're speaking to someone who you're looking for help from, they should really be going into that level of sort of depth. Now, I don't try to leave it at that. I try to give them a bit more. And I explain Tim's rationale here. So Tim is a world famous sports scientist out of Australia. He's the man behind the acute to chronic workload ratio, if anyone's familiar with that. But this is the key thing. It's not the amount of running that you're doing is key. It's more important for me how someone gets to that volume. So the sudden spikes, the lack of recovery, those are the problems that bite the ultra runner in the bum, not necessarily the distance. I always explain it this way. I could ruin a runner in 10K a week if I wanted to. If I took a runner of any flavor to the track, give me 10K's worth of running, and if I wanted to, I could ruin you. I wouldn't. I'd never do that, obviously. But it's a really good way of explaining that you don't need distance to kill someone. Because it'd be how I got you to the 10K would be the problem, not the 10K. Flip that around. Most runners could probably get away with 50 miles a week quite happily if they built up to it and managed it in the right way. I was quoted with this years ago now, while I was speaking at a talk I gave. One of those times something just falls out of your mouth and someone picks up on it and then you run with it for the rest of your life. But consistency is key. I'd rather have a runner who's consistently doing moderate mileage than a runner who's inconsistent with very high mileage. It's those spikes. That's what I really don't want to see in people. And where life tends to get in the way for most of us recreational runners is where these problems happen. I was on night shifts and I couldn't run for 7 days. So I tried to play catch up again. The 5 days I had off from shift, I ended up doing 120 miles. But the last time I did 5 days of running, it was only 30 miles. So it's that huge spike. It's the ones who, I got COVID and the wife was ill and then something else came up. We moved house, we were on holidays, all the usual things. Teachers, I've got teachers I work with right now. We're busy marking papers and exams as the end of the year approaches, and it's really affecting how they're doing. So the answer for most ultra runners here is to change the training plan. Don't change yourself to fit the training plan. Make it a consistently moderate time to run rather than there. So it's altering a training plan is the answer. So how much should I do? We've sort of answered that a little bit in that last one. I think, again, a lot of this comes down to how your training week or your plan would look. Maybe you're someone who wants to run 6 days a week, but physically struggles to run 6 days a week. So you may be better off accumulating consistent miles through less frequent runs that are a bit longer potentially. You might be someone who can't tolerate regular runs, but can't tolerate huge runs, long runs. So you tend to add volume gradually over that way over multiple days. The key thing I always do this is, and it surprises a lot of people, if an athlete asks me this, I say to them, first question, well, what have you done? So I'm a huge fan of training logs, whether you keep it electronically on paper. I want to go back and see what you've done, because that will tell me, and you, the things that do go well when you're running well and the things that you're doing when things aren't going well. So the answers are almost not something a coach or a therapist can give you. It's something that a coach or therapist can facilitate with you by looking back on your own stuff as you go forward. So if the answer, if a question that you've attended tonight was, how much should you do? How long should I run? How many runs? Hopefully you leave it going, well, do you know what? I don't even keep a running log of any significance or volume or record. I'm going to start doing that. And then we'll be able to backtrack back. What I would say on this, when it comes to this as the only absolute, I see a lot of people advocate for a direct correlation in distance based on what you would advise to a marathon runner. So most people training for a 26-mile marathon would probably accept 18 to 20 mile long run. Some go to 22, some a bit less, but around 20 miles is the norm that most people would do. Now, if you're doing a 50-mile run, that doesn't correlate that your long run should be 40 to 45 miles, which a lot of people do. They simply double things or triple things based on distance. I'm not a fan of that. What I would say is, although your longer run will get longer, it will be in a ratio that is smaller compared to the total race distance, if that makes sense. So I might only get a 50-mile guy doing a 30-mile run. I might only get a 100-miler doing a 40-miler, something along those lines. I know that's not an absolute answer for many, but hopefully that just gives you a bit of rationale to that one. Is there a best way to train for an ultra? No, there's a best way for you. There's a best way for you right now, but there's no magic formula for this one. And be very wary and cautious of anyone that gives you, yes, my way is the best way, because, and there are, and I'll never name them. If you want me to name them privately because they're maybe influencing something you're doing, you can get in touch and ask me if my thoughts on someone potentially. But I know runners, I know coaches out there who are runners, and use my formula that I used for my race because this will get you to the on. Not necessarily. It's what worked for them. Might work for you, but it's not a prescriptive process that will work for you. What's the longest run I should do? Again, we've sort of answered that in some of the last slides. But what I wanted to do here, in a way of not just dismissing it as it's different for everyone, what I wanted to show you is 2 case studies. These are athletes I'm working with right now. They're both happy for me to share them anonymously, a bit about them. But I wanted to explain how there's more than one way to skin the ultra running cat. So this is a female that I'm working with, comes from a fantastic pedigree of ability. Multiple Ironman finisher at international age group level, sub-elite marathon runner. She's a sub-3 hour girl, and has done multiple 50 to 100K ultras. With this race that we're training for, which is a track-based 24-hour ultra, she's failed in the past because she struggles to go past 30 miles on long runs, and she breaks down with injury. So because of the nature of that, the long runs that we're working with her aren't really going past about 20 miles as far as go out the door, do your typical run and come back. We're investigating moving her forward with some outside the box thinking. So we're doing a lot of these things. Now, these will fall in at various parts of her plan. So don't think that these are the things she's doing in the first couple of weeks. We've built up a really good base to get to this with a lot of feedback along the way. But we tried this. So we did 6 hours of running over 12 hours because a 6-hour run for her probably wasn't great. Now, we'll change this and evolve this, that maybe the hour off becomes an hour walk and it starts to replicate a little bit more of what we're doing. We started breaking it into these type of sessions, extending it to 24-hour sessions. And I wouldn't do this with everyone training for this type of event. This isn't something that everyone does. It's because of her pedigree and her background and some of the things that we're trying to avoid. And we've even gone into this level where, and she's just done this race this week, this run this weekend. And in 2 weeks, she's 6 weeks out from her race. And in 2 or 3 weeks, this is the last thing we're going to do. Because this gets her to run fatigued, it gets her to run through the night, and it gets her to be race specific in her preparation. Now, another athlete that I'm working with right now, who's going for 100 miles solo, but will probably take 20 to 24 hours. So that's why I've compared the two. She's DNF'd a couple of 100 milers before, and genuinely believed that the reason that happened is she hadn't done enough long runs in her training plan because of the way the training plan was structured and a little bit of pain. But she's worried that if she did back-to-back each week long runs, it's going to be too much for her and it'll affect negatively her training. So we're in a little block of training right now, and this is a 4-week snapshot of a 6-week block. So the context is lost a little bit. My point on this was we're dovetailing here with a weekend, and I know there's other people who are watching tonight that I'm working with who have done similar recently. One weekend is a long run, but as you can see, we've got specific goals for it. The other ones become 2 runs over the weekend, split into shorter distances. And again, each one will have different little premises that we're aiming for. We're not always out there smashing ourselves just for time or for distance or for whatever else we're doing. But 2 little insights to show you that there's many, many ways that we can approach the same race. So you may have gone, and I get this all the time, oh, I tried 100, Mike, but I can't do it. It just broke me. Okay, well, tell me about the training, because maybe there's a different way to get there, which to me, the shorter the distance, let's go back to marathon and below, there are still multiple ways to train, but the shorter the distance, I think we get less variability in our options to train for it. More people do the same type of thing. So see Ultra not only as a tough challenge, but actually there are doors that open when you go long that you may not have in some of the shorter distances. And that excites me as an athlete. It excites me as a coach. And it relieves me as a therapist that there's other ways to get there. But all of these things just reinforce the statement that it's about the individual athlete. Don't worry what anyone else is doing. But likewise, don't worry about what you used to do. Because each athlete will change. We get older, we get thinner, we get fatter, we get faster, we get slower, we become parents, we change jobs, we move house. There's different things in our lives that change. Even the environments that we may be able to train in, the amount of training we do, all of these things change, better and worse. So it is about being individualized moving forward. Really good question, this one. This is one that doesn't get asked enough. But if someone asks me this, I get a little light bulb going on. Like these runners, these are thinking deep about it. So there is that natural sort of thought process of, well, I'm just going to run really slow for longer. When we looked at the run repeat study, we saw that speeds were coming down. So, oh, well, and I get a lot of people say to me, well, I used to be a really fast marathon runner, but I'm older now. I can't do that. I'm just going to slow down and go longer. And that actually is fine. The key thing is, to answer this question, is what's your goal? What are you chasing? If you're chasing faster times, PBs, or if you're in a race where there's cutoffs, checkpoints that you have to make, speed work may be an option. The difference being, it shouldn't be the type of speed work that you would associate with a shorter distance. I don't want you smashing 1 minute intervals, 1 mile intervals. They'll be longer, slower, but faster than your slow plods. And they may fit at a certain point in your training or may only be needed at certain races or events, not as a standard strategy. So hopefully that answers that one. Poles. So walking poles, hiking poles, however you want to call them. Bit of a contentious one. The ultra runner snobbery, particularly your podium type people, will sort of frown on this one, or don't use them. And that's okay for them to say because they run really fast. Probably don't need them. But for a lot of us, they can be a really useful thing to have. I think for me, the little bit of extra weight and awkwardness carrying them far outweighs is far outweighed by the benefits or potential benefits they could give us. When we're ascending, we can hold those poles, get upright, open our chest up, get some more lung capacity, take some stress off the quads and the thighs as we go up. Coming down, we can definitely reduce the forces through the knees if we find coming down tough. And of course, what they are also is a crutch. So if you've got foot problems, injuries, pains, could just be a simple twisted ankle, you've got an insurance policy that can bail you out. So I would never dismiss this for a lot of people. What I would say is give it a go. It is a skill. All skills are trainable. You can spot them a mile away at a race, the person who's pulled them out for the first time and doesn't know how to even put them together or how to walk with them. Practice them, you can get very efficient and actually your performance can improve. And there's lots of people these days doing things like half-day workshops on using poles. I don't know if you need to go to that extent. A little bit of trial and error tends to work for most people. But I've lent my poles to people in races because they got injured and it's helped them get to the end. Just make sure you get them back at the end. So, don't rule that out. Don't think they're not things to try, but practice them if you plan to use them. If you're a walk runner for an ultra run, then you can become very efficient at your walking and faster at your walking by using your poles. Pacers. So this is an interesting one. Not all races allow you to have a pacer, but there does seem to be more and more races these days happy for support crew to run with you or for a pacer to be unofficially next to you. Sometimes you team up with another competitor, which is obviously a bit risky because you don't know what you're going to do. But what I would always say with this stuff is, give it some thought and some planning if you're going to do it. Why do you need a pacer and when do you need a pacer? If you're thinking of using it, have a strategy. If and when I've ever used a pacer or been a pacer, then if I've had a pacer, and I have sometimes on multi-day races when I know I'm broken at certain points in the race, I'll ask someone to run a 10-mile or 10K block with me that's really hard, but I'm very domineering with them. If the weather's inclement, run in front of me. Otherwise, I want you to run slightly behind me because I need to see the terrain and I don't want to be tripping over things because I can't see because of you. If I want you in front of me, I'll tell you how far I want you to be trying. If you're setting me a pace and you're going too fast, I'm going to tell you need to slow down because then you're a hindrance, not a help. So you can be there for morale and they can be there just to cheer you on, but they've got a reason. And I think the key thing is, again, rehearse with it, but make sure that they're prepared. I know of a runner who was planning on having a friend meet him. It was an overnight race. And at a certain point in the middle of the night, right out in the sticks, was waiting for a runner friend to join him at a checkpoint. He was hanging, his whole race was hanging on this partner helping him out. And what happened was the partner hadn't done his admin and didn't realize he had to sign up and register for the race. So effectively, the marshals wouldn't let him run. And it absolutely broke this guy who was waiting for him. So again, consider administrative and logistical stuff with all this, but try it, give it a go if it's something you want to run. Is time on feet a useful strategy? Well, as a military man, yes. A lot of the things we used to do back in the day were just about being on our feet for longer. I think this is a concept that's misunderstood. Some people see this as a vague way of training, an unspecified way of training, an unscientific approach. But actually, and it's like accumulating junk miles, but I don't think it is. I think lots of people train this way. Again, it could be periodized, maybe in the early stages of your training or the late, depending on what you're doing. Perhaps you just discard the tech, discard the pressures of running at a set pace or a set distance or a set heart rate. And you just go, right, I'm just going to do 7 hours, 6 hours, whatever it might be. It's not for everyone because of that vagueness. And again, post-injury, or if someone is suffering with an injury, I quite like them to train the time on feet to remove some of those other pressures. Is it really okay to walk? I don't think I need to dwell on this one too much. Absolutely. There's very few of us would ever plan on not walking in a race, and actually on uphills, downhills, and points when we're tired, we can be faster and more efficient by walking. There's a snobbery with certain echelons of ultra running that you shouldn't walk, it's a failure. But that tends to migrate up from the shorter distances. I think that's where that's come from. The true ultra running community know that it's a vitally important thing. Difficult terrain, ups and downs, if you're trying to save energy, if the environment's tough, or just when you're knackered, walking can be a really useful thing. Again, injury, sometimes in race or in heavy training, an injury can just be eased off by slowing down a little bit and walking, because the amount of ground reaction forces we can change by just changing the speed. But again, I would practice it, use it as a deliberate, if it's a deliberate plan in your tactics, it's something that needs to be changed. Aid stations. I've used this picture on purpose with a specific analogy in mind. Aid stations are there obviously to help, but too many people sometimes see them either as I need to get through here as fast as I can, or I see them as a sanctuary where I'm going to just hang out. It saves me from running for a while. People can lose energy and time by not using them efficiently. And likewise, I've seen people who spend so long in checkpoints and aid stations that they add a ridiculous amount of time onto their races and even miss checkpoints. So again, have a strategy, understand where they are in the race, what they could do. Someone who's attending tonight, we had a fantastic catch up about 3-4 weeks ago, chatting about a race he's got planned. And we chatted exactly about this type of stuff. At checkpoint 1, I'm going to be fresh. This is the things I look to eat. This is the amount of time I look to spend there. In checkpoint 5, coming down off that big climb, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to spend a bit longer in them. It's an N=1 strategy. There's no one size fits all for working in aid stations.